All right, welcome back to the DeFi House lesson 4, providing liquidity into the liquidity pools, LPs. So, this lesson will be a bit of a longer one, and I will be covering all of the basics, all of the theory, and a bit of practice as well, how liquidity pools work, what kind of liquidity pools do we have, and how the fees are earned inside of the liquidity pools. So, very simply, imagine a swimming pool with two types of balls floating in it. Let's say we have some yellow balls acting as USDC, for example, and we have some blue balls acting as Ethereum, for example. So this is your liquidity pool. So people come to the pool and they trade the yellow balls for the blue balls or the blue balls for the yellow balls. So they are consistently trading between one asset to another asset. And every single transaction, every single exchange, the swap between yellow ball and blue ball, they pay a fee, right? Because imagine that you are the pool owner, right? And a lot of different people bring their balls, in this case, either USDC or Ethereum, and others come and trade. I want to get some that, I want to get some that. But in order to get access to trading, every single transaction involves a fee. And that fee is the yield that you are able to generate, because that fee that the traders pay always goes to the liquidity providers. So you are using decentralized exchanges to swap different tokens, right? Well, so is everyone else. Absolutely every single person that is participating in the market on a decentralized matter. So essentially, they're not using like Binance or KuCoin or Coinbase or any other centralized exchange. If they are participating in the market from a decentralized perspective, so for example, they are catching meme coins on different wallets, tools, dex screener, anything, right? Any kind of decentralized transaction when they're swapping between one asset to another, it all involves decentralized exchanges. So every time someone makes a swap between two assets, they pay a small fee. And that fee doesn't go to the DEX. It goes to the liquidity providers, people like me and future you, right? Who supply the assets that make those swaps possible. So even if you are swapping through a wallet like Phantom, for example, right? You open up your Phantom and you swap some USDC to Solana or Solana to USDC or Solana to any meme coin, doesn't matter. You are actually using decentralized exchanges behind the scenes. The wallet acts as the aggregator. The wallet finds the best decentralized exchange with the best price and the lowest possible price impact, slippage, right? And you swap it. In your wallet, you see the balance change instantly, but actually behind the scenes, you used one of the decentralized exchange. And depending on the exchange and the pool that the wallet, for example, used, those people that provided liquidity specifically to that DEX and specifically to that pool got rewarded, right? So now to earn those fees, you need to provide both assets into liquidity pools. That's how it works. So for example, if you have a liquidity pool Solana versus USDC, and if you want to participate as a liquidity provider, you have to bring both assets into the pool in 50-50 proportion. Or at least, I'm just giving you a little hint of what's coming. At least it used to be like that. Right now, we have way more advanced methods that I'm going to cover. But before, it used to be always 50-50 proportion deposit. So basically, if you want to provide $10,000 worth of assets into the Sol USDC pool, you will need to bring $5,000 in Sol and $5,000 in USDC. And then when you deposit those assets into the pool, you are earning the fees. That's it. It's very simple, it's very quick. But here is the key. Once the price of Solana starts moving, your deposit ratio will shift as well, because that's how the automated market making works. So you might have started with 50-50 balance, like 50-50 proportion of your deposited assets, but you won't necessarily withdraw the same ratio. The value is, of course, dependent on how the asset moved, whether they go up in value or down will change. But your deposit rate will also change, because at the time of withdrawal, you could end up with more USDC and less Solanas, or the other way around, depending on how the price moved. So it's totally normal. If you deposited 50-50, don't expect to withdraw 50-50 unless the price of Solana is exactly at the same price than when you deposited. Otherwise, you might have a bit of a less Solanas, more USDC, or more Solanas and less USDC at the time of withdrawal. It's not a massive problem. It's just something that you have to remember and understand that it happens. And the fees that you are getting, they also come in the same way, roughly 50-50. So for example, if you stayed in the pool for a few days, weeks, months, doesn't matter, right? And you generated, let's say, $25 in fees, that $25 will be 50% in USDC and 50% in Solanas as well. So it's just something that you have to remember. And that's in most cases, cases and traditional pools. There are certain decentralized exchanges offering a bit of a different way, and we're going to be using them a lot because the fees you can get from that other way is so much higher. But in most cases, in traditional liquidity provision, you are getting paid in 50-50 proportion as well. But all of this that I just explained was the very first type of decentralized finance, right? And liquidity pools. The very first method where you deploy the assets into the pool in 50-50 proportion and you let them run and generate you the yield. But that method was really inefficient. The capital was really working inefficiently, so to speak. Because the problem was that a lot of your capital just sits there doing nothing. Because traditional liquidity pools, the ones that I just described, spread your funds across the entire price curve, even parts the market rarely touches. So for example, if you deposited into the full range, right, or also known as the traditional liquidity pools, into the Solana USDC pool, no matter the price of Solana, you will be earning the fees, right? If Solana goes to $1,000 or drops to $5, it doesn't matter. You will be earning the fees. But the problem is that, let's say Solana is trading at 180 at the moment, right? And over the past 2 years, it always ranged between $60 and $280, for example. Meaning that if you had your liquidity within the full range, no matter the price, most of your money and most of the pool money did nothing, because the only range that generated the fees were 60 and 280 over the past 2 years, as an example, right? So if you provide liquidity across that full range, most of your capital is sitting outside the current trading zone, not earning the fees. And this is why the version 3 pools were introduced, so to speak, and they are known as the concentrated liquidity pools. And this is the current generation of pools, and they let you generate way higher fees with way more predictability and control over your money. So Concentrated liquidity pools, they let you choose a specific price range to deploy your capital into, where the actual trading is happening, right? So here's how it works on a high level, just as a theory, and later on we will go into the actual practice stuff. So if you provide liquidity to the Sol USDC pool between 150 and 250, so maybe you checked the charts, you check the historical price movement, and you see that Solana is currently, let's say, at 180, and you don't expect the price to drop below 150 and not to rise above 250 within the next, I don't know, maybe a week, a month, it doesn't matter, based on your strategy, of course. So you are earning the fees only while the price stays in that range. But because you are earning the fees only within the range, your capital, your whole amount, so for example, the same $10,000 deposited into the full range will earn you, let's say, 10% a year, maybe at most, while concentrated liquidity pool within a specific range, 150 and 250, if the market is active, may actually earn those 10% in a month or even in a week, because your capital, your whole amount, is working concentrated very efficiently within the specified range. So this is way more efficient than just deploying into the full range, no matter the price curve, and just basically holding the money in without making them work efficiently. But there are two things to know: that if Solana drops below 150, for example, you stop earning the fees because the price is now outside of your specified range. So you are no longer earning the fees, and your position turns into 100% Sol, because at the time of deposit, you deposited in a specific ratio, let's say 50-50, it could be 60-40, 70-30, depends on the current price and your range. But if your range is equal, for example, from current price, 5% above, 5% below, then you will deposit in 50-50 ratio. If, for example, you set the range only 1% above, but 7% below, then you will deploy in a completely different ratio as well. You will deposit more asset 1 than asset 2, and vice versa, right? So if the position goes out of range, you will be converted, your whole deposit, your whole money will be converted into asset 1 or 2, depending on how the price broke out of the range. So you will be converted to asset 1, to the first asset of the pool, in this case Solana, for example. If the price goes down and goes below your specified range, and you will be converted to asset 2, in this case USDC, if the Solana price goes above 250. So if it breaks 250, same thing, you are no longer earning the fees, and now you hold 100% in USDC. It's not a problem, but it could be in two different ways. I will explain this very detailed on the next video, but basically it either could mean the impermanent loss, right? Because if Solana is rising, for example, massively, yeah, it's now at 180, you had the range 150 to 250, it broke above 250, you now have 100% in USDC, and Solana is continuously going up. That money, for you, it's opportunity cost, because you are not gaining from the increased price of Solana because you are out of range and you are fully in USDC. And if you haven't reacted, if you haven't closed your position and swap back to Solana, for example, that additional price of Solana, let's say it goes to 270 or something, you are missing on that gain. So it's not a loss, but it's the opportunity cost. The same happens from the other side. If, for example, Solana dropped to 150, and let's say it's now at 140, your whole money is converted into Solana, and if it's continuously dropping, you are no longer earning the fees, and the value of your deposit is also dropping. So this is known as impermanent loss, right? So there are many ways to avoid that, to manage that, to hedge against that, or to rebalance the pools and change the ranges in a specific matter that I'm going to explain, to always stay in range and always generate yield and income. But from the high level perspective, that's how it works. So that's why the strategy really matters here. Your chosen range controls your risk, returns, and capital efficiency. If you make the range too narrow, yes, you will earn a lot more fees, but the price will slip out of the range very quickly. And you will have to constantly readjust because you cannot very simply modify the range. If you went out of range, in most decentralized exchanges, you have to fully close the position, take the assets back to your wallet, and recreate a new one. There are some tools that let you do that a bit more automatically, but it's not very common practice among different blockchains just yet. So if you make the range, for example, if the current price of Solana is 180 and you make the range 175, 185, it's a very small range. It will generate you a lot of fees. I will show you. But the moment it slips out of the range, you either convert it to one asset or another based on how the market broke the range, and you are no longer earning the fees. So you have to constantly sit and manage these positions, right? On the other hand, if you make the range too wide, too big, you earn less because your capital is spread too thin across the curve, meaning that if the current price is 180 and most of the trading happens between 150 and 250, for example, but you made the range 60 and 450, for example, a massive range for Solana, then you will generate yield, but that yield will be so much smaller. You will earn way, way, way less because most of the money is outside the current trading zone. So this is, why the strategy really matters, and you have to think about the ranges, the strategy, the system. Because smart liquidity providers, they learn to analyze the price action of that asset, the volume zones and volatility to deploy capital efficiently. Because in DeFi, the capital that is not working is capital that is losing. It may not be the actual monetary loss, but it's still losing because you are not earning the fees, you are not gaining anything from your capital. And in DeFi, your money needs to be working for you 24/7, 365, always. If your money is not working in DeFi, there's something wrong. So this is why you are now watching this video, and this is why I am explaining how it all works, and I'm going to share all of the strategies, all of the methods, everything on how to actually ensure that your money is always working and you are gaining. So this is the theory, how the liquidity pools work. Now, just to end this lesson, let me jump on the actual protocol, one of the protocols on Solana, and let me show you how it all looks. We will not open any position just yet, but I want to show you what I mean when I say the range, full range, fees, etc. on the actual protocol. Okay, so we are now on Orca, and Orca is one of the most well-known DeFi protocols on Solana, and it's one of the biggest, not the biggest, but one of. And I really like Orca because of the UI experience and how good and smooth the whole protocol is. So as you can see, if you come to the orca.so, this link right here, you are basically able to swap between different assets, right? And that's what I mean. When you swap between one asset to another, you are participating in DeFi. You are paying a transaction fee, and that fee goes to people like me and future you. So let's go to the pools, and you will see that you have a lot of different pools available to deploy capital into. But for this example, the most common one, the biggest one, the most popular one is, of course, Solana versus USDC. As you can see, they have over $39 million worth of TVL, which stands for total value locked. So how much money is in the pool? The volume in 24 hours, which is 124 almost million dollars per 24 hours. So when you click on the pool, you see two options. Position range, you have full, which is the old way. So basically, no matter the price, you are always in range, but you will be earning pretty much nothing if you deploy the capital into the full range. Or, as you can see, the deposit ratio is 50-50. Or you have another option, which is custom, where you set the range just like that. As you can see, the current price is 166, and you are able to deploy your capital within your specified range. So for example, if we keep this range that Orca just suggested, which is 6% in total, 3% down, 3% up from the current price, which is 162 and 170, this would be the range. You would be earning about 0.69% per day per 24 hours. Of course, this number is really dynamic. It's always changing based on the market conditions, because the yield that you generate in DeFi pools is not magic. It's not out of nowhere. If more people are trading in this pool, if more people are swapping, they pay more fees. If they pay more fees, you earn more yield. If a trading activity, for example, on this pool slows down and less people are trading, you will be getting less fees. Simple as that. So I always recommend, as a golden rule, non-written but golden rule, divide this number by 2. So you don't have such a high expectations on your pool. Because if you see 0.69, let's say 0.7% per day, it's very rarely that you're going to get exactly 0.7%. Sometimes you might get even more, let's say 0.9% per day, but in most cases, it's going to be a bit less. So my best recommendation is to always divide this number by 2. So in this case, it would be 0.35, 0.4, more or less, something like that, which is way more realistic. And if you get a bit more, it acts as a bonus, right? But don't expect to always get the exact this amount. So now, if I change the range to even smaller, for example, 1%, so 165, 168, a very tiny range, right? I'm earning 1.8, almost 1.8% a day. And you might think that's amazing, right? It's much more. But for Solana to leave this range, it's very, very simple. It's just 1% up and 1% down, which is nothing for Solana. It can do that within the next 5 minutes, for example. Or, of course, it might stay for a few hours within this range. You will never know for sure, but it's based on your risk approach and greed. And I never encourage being greedy in DeFi markets. So now let's make something more realistic. Let's say 10% range. 10% range from current price. So this will be 150, 183. In this case, your fees, your estimated yield is 0.18%. Let's assume 0.2% per day, which is not that much, which is about 5 to 6% a month, which is in that matter a lot, right? If you compare to the traditional finances. 6% a month is absolutely incredible, and you can generate 6% a month on DeFi very easily without much of a risk going into very risky or very volatile assets. Solana USDC pool, 10% range in both ways is pretty low risk. It's pretty low risk because 10% for Solana is quite something. It's not on a daily basis you're gonna see Solana moving 10%. So it's pretty good, right? In terms of risk approach. And because it's 10-10, in both ways you have the same amount of percentages, the deposit ratio in this case is very close to 50-50, as you can see. 47.5% in Solana and 52.5% in USDC. But now, if I want to make the range not like that, but for example, minus 10%, but only plus 3%, because I think Solana is more likely to go down rather than up. And I want to have more space to go lower rather than just leaving it at 50-50. In this case, as you can see, you will be depositing 24% in Solana and 76% in USDC. And vice versa would happen if you do only, let's say, 3% down and way more on the way up. Let's say plus 8% or plus 12%. In this case, you will be depositing most of your deposit into Solana and just a bit in USDC, 80-20 in this case. So this is how the whole range system works. And I showed you this on Orca, but it's pretty much the exact same across all of the decentralized exchanges. The only difference will be in the UI and how it looks. But the system itself, setting up the ranges, is pretty much identical within all of the decentralized exchanges, no matter the chain. On Solana, on Sui, on Ethereum layer 2s, it doesn't matter. Most dexes will give you very similar experience while setting the ranges. So that's pretty much it. That's how it looks and that's how it works. And now you know this. Over the next lesson, I'm going to explain you in detail the whole impermanent loss thing, because people think it's a very massive thing when in reality it's pretty simple. And then we're going to start actually creating the pools across multiple chains. I'm going to show you how to enter into the pool, how to manage it, and show you how it all works and looks when you actually have capital deployed into the pools. So thank you for watching this one. Hopefully it's not been too difficult to understand. And of course, I will see you on the next video.